Welcome back. So in this video, we're going to go ahead and get our domain controller set up. We'll get some OUs created. We'll add some users, some groups. We'll add a virtual printer just so we can push some GPOs, just some basic stuff, maybe a small file share and map drive. Building off the last video, we got the Sophos all set up. We added our VLANs, which is our management servers, devices, our access for our workstations, and then a voice for phones. We put those all into their own separate zones. Each zone, of course, has different levels of device access. The voice really only needs DNS. Doesn't even need ping, but it's nice for troubleshooting. Same with access. I did add the user portal for VPN, something you would probably use in the real world. And then our management zone, of course, has access to everything. We did last time our basic rules just to get up to the internet. So I've got one separate rule for each zone and each setup, just so I can apply different features and services to them. You're not going to have nearly the lockdown on this one as you are on the other two. Voice, you really want to leave wide open. We also turned off the SIP module, which is something that we've seen cause a lot of issues in regards to VoIP devices, especially the ones we use all the time. Okay, so let's go ahead. We'll get into our domain controller here that we're going to set up. This is just a server 2022 evaluation ISO that I've kind of deployed in here. Could definitely go into depth on EVE-NG a little bit as well. I'll probably do some videos on that, how to create your own templates and nodes, and just basically this server, when I deploy it, it'll boot up to this. I don't need to go through the installation process every single time. I mean, it's no different than installing Windows 10 or 7 or, it's the same kind of thing. So once this thing's booted up and we can sign in, we'll get going on that. So the thing I don't like about this program is Control Delete does not work well. It's actually not working at all, so let's try that again. Well, no. There we go. After the 100th try, we are in. So I've gone ahead and put I guess you can see I've changed this up a little bit. I added some color and a little square. Thinking what we'll do is we'll maybe add a branch office in eventually and do some site-to-site VPN, stuff like that. I've actually got a situation that would be nice to lab out where I need to pass some certain ports over site-to-site VPN and make sure the users can connect back to the domain controller. So it'd be nice to test that in a lab environment before I deploy it in the real world. We're going to do NIC teaming. So as you can see, I've added 2 network cards to this. They're both just on the native VLAN, which is our server devices management VLAN. We've got our trunk cable coming from the Sophos to the switch, which is passing VLANs 1, 20, and 30. And then VLAN 20 and 30 going to our client device. 30 would be for the phones, like normally you would have maybe a VoIP device sitting here with an Ethernet cord going to the computer. The switch would say, oh, this VoIP device should be given VLAN 30 and pass everything else through to the workstation. So it's pretty neat. It's nice when you can just go and plug a phone into any device, any port on the switch, and not have to worry about going in and messing with configuration changes. Okay, so let's get our actually, let's do a bit of prep first on this server. So there's a few things I always like to do with these things, especially in the lab here. Well, even in the real world, we don't need anything special here. Usually just do something like that. Power plan is a big one. Put that on high performance so it gives it as much power. All right. So we've adjusted our performance, we've adjusted our power plan. Let's give this thing a name. I always like to do that before we join it. So we'll just call this HQ dash AD. We will restart later because we have a few other changes to make. So let's actually let's set up our NIC team first. So let's do that. And then we'll assign static IP to the actual team. Okay, so we're gonna go teams, new team, HQ-AD team. Doesn't really matter. All right, and we're gonna do switch independent. We're gonna allow the server to make the decisions on the team. You can come in and there's all different kinds of things that you can set up in here. Right now, like could do LACP and configure that on the switch, but I'm not going to go to that depth. This is usually what most people do in a Hyper-V environment as well. You would do something similar due to the fact that you can't do it that way. So it just takes a while to come up. So there we go. Now we're online. Let's refresh our team. So now we just have the one device here, which will come in and we'll assign ourselves static IP address. We don't need QoS packet scheduler. Can even turn off IPv6. We're not using that. Let's come in here. So this is on the 10.10.10 network. So we're going to give this 10.10.10.10. It's a /24. Our default gateway will be 10.1. Preferred DNS, we're going to make this a domain controller. So let's just do that. And just to get out to the net for now, we'll give it the good old Google DNS. Okay, so let's just quickly test this because it should be working. Oh, actually, here we go. Let's get on our switch and turn our interfaces on. We're not doing interface range. Interface. Oh, if range on this one. And it's case sensitive, of course. All right, whatever. As you can see, I'm not an expert in the Aruba switches, so we'll just go this way. Let's save our configuration. All right, let's go back to our DHCP. On if I could spell properly. And we, for some reason, still have no pin. Oh, yeah, wow. Looking like an idiot here. Apologize, guys. As you can see, this is not a scripted and WLAN access 1. Interface 1/1/7, no routing. And there we go. Okay, so sorry about that. Now we're back up in action. So let's go back to our switch quick. Let's exit, and copy. Run, start. Okay. So now the server's going to do a few things. There's probably a bazillion updates. I'm not going to run those to make you guys wait for that. They're already pending install, so actually, that was quick. Okay, so let's give this thing a restart now that we've renamed it and set up the IP and set up a few other things. I'll just come back when it's up and running. Okay, so we're back with the magic video. Let's get signed in. We'll get this thing set up as a domain controller. Okay, I don't know if this will let us do it yet. No, it's still collecting inventory. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our roles and features. It's going to be a role or feature based. This is going to be our server, as there's only one. So we are going to add domain services, and we are going to turn this into a DHCP server as well. I'm a strong believer in having separate servers for separate roles. DHCP is one that I do not mind throwing on a domain controller. It's so easy to migrate if you have to. It could be done during production, and no one would notice it happened. I guess since we're only going to keep one, we might as well add, is that what I want? No, I want to go over here. Yeah, we do want print document services. It looks like they've changed the name of that. But okay, well, let's go ahead and go next. We don't need to worry about everything here. Everything is good. Next, yes, tie into Azure. Something we may do as well. Prints queues types, yeah, that's fine. There we go. Yeah, print server. Okay. It will restart after we promote, set up our domain. We'll let this go through, and then we'll get started on actually getting this thing turned into a domain controller. Okay, so everything's been installed, and we can go ahead and get this all set up. So don't do this till you've done this, because this is going to authorize with your Active Domain account, Active Directory account, domain account. So we're going to add a new forest. This will be your domain name of your business. If you have a website, I strongly suggest you do something different. Don't use business.com as your domain if that's the same as your website. It can cause issues with DNS. It's just bad practice. So for instance, I have a domain. We'll just do ad.killseclab.com. So if I wanted to use killseclab.com as a website or anything public facing externally, I don't have to worry about it, causing any problems with my DNS and just it's just all around better practice to do that way. You could do corporate, you could do anything. Even the .local is not recommended anymore. That was something we used to use a long time ago. killseclab.local. It just looks nicer when you got that .com in there. This is your directory services restore mode password. If you ever have to restore this domain controller, from a major catastrophe, make sure you write this password down. I personally never had to use this, but it's there for a reason. We can just stick with the defaults here. This is going to give us our NetBIOS domain name. And this same thing, unless you want to change it, you can. I'm just going to leave it as AD. We're going to keep the default paths. And this is just kind of an overview of our options. There's a script here if you ever want to PowerShell this stuff. Builds it out for you, copy paste it, keep it for later. Great for server core installations. Something I'm definitely going to go into. I personally like server core quite a bit. You don't have all this overhead. If you're working with virtual machines in ESXi or something, you can run core servers and you don't use up very much resources compared to 8 to 16 gigs you're going to use nowadays for a modern server, modern Active Directory. 8 gigs sometimes is just pushing it. So this is just going to go through all our checks. Everything should pass. Don't worry about the warnings. It's going to create all our partitions and our objects. Once this is complete, the server will reboot. We can go ahead and start setting up our DHCP scopes and our scope options. All right, so that's her. So she will reboot. I'll come back when she's back up and running. Okay, we are back. So now, as you can see, we've got this AD in front of administrator, which is indicating that we are successfully in domain now. This is going to be our first load up here. Bigger. All right, so we got a few ways to access the different settings we're going to go through. You can either go here to tools, and now you're going to see, like when you first boot up a server, you're not going to have nearly all these options. So now we've got our Active Directory users and computers, we've got DHCP, we've got sites and services, domains and trusts, administrative center, DNS, DHCP, group policy management. We've got our print management now that we've installed a print server. So let's first start by authorizing our DHCP. So we'll complete our DHCP configuration. So this is going to create the required groups. We're going to see if we would have done this before. It causes a bit of an issue when you come to authorize it later. It's nice to do it once your domain is all set up and you're authorizing to the domain. All right, so that's all done. So let's go ahead and start there. So we'll head on over to the DHCP console. Make this a bit bigger for. So here we go. We've got our hq-ad.ad.killsickcloud.com. We're going to start getting some scopes up in our IPv4. So we're going to right click on IPv4 and click new scope. Go ahead, let's give this thing a name. So this will be our access VLAN 20. You can give it a good description. It really helps the next guy that comes along. Access scope for clients, workstations on VLAN 20. Sure. All right. So since this is a lab, we're not going to give it a whole ton of addresses, but let's give it. I always like to start a bit higher. So let's do 30, just in case you want some static IPs set for something, and we'll just go to 40. So this is going to be a 24, so make sure you change that depending on the length of your subnet mask, what kind of subnet you're using. This is for exclusions. We don't need to worry about that right now. Again, lab, I'm going to change this to a day. You can set this to whatever you want. This is how long the IP address will be given out before it renews, and it always renews. It'll start to renew the renewal process at 4 days or 12 hours. It's always half. And this is going to now configure our DHCP options. So our default gateway for this VLAN is 10.10.20.1. We're going to give this. We can also throw in, another one. If you had 2 DNS servers, you could throw in your secondary DNS. You could throw in Google, whatever you want to do, but we're going to just leave it as standard. We don't have a Win server. We're not going to worry about that. And yes, we want to activate this scope now. All right, let's go back, do another one. This will be our voice VLAN 30. Devices on VLAN 30. Same thing. We'll give this just like we'll start at 30 on this one. Doesn't really matter, and we'll just go to 40. Again, change this to 24. We don't have any exclusions. We'll give it a day. Default being allowed, and this actually isn't going to be used at all because we can't plug a phone into here. Gateway slot 1. This is where we're going to change. We don't want any of this. We just want this thing going out to the internet. So let's give it Google. It's going to validate, ensure it can talk to it, and we'll give it Cloudflare. You could use anything you want. Quad 9, OpenDNS. Maybe you have a different DNS server that you use for internal devices that's different from your domain. And I am not going to set up a domain DHCP scope for our management network. That'll be all statically assigned devices anyway, so we're not going to worry about that. Okay, so now that is done, let's walk through that whole process. Instead of making that big, let's close that. Let's head over to our Sophos. May need to sign in. No, we didn't set that. Okay, so we've got our access VLAN, we've got our voice VLAN here. So how are these going to get those DHCP addresses? Well, that's where you're going to come over to DHCP tab here. So network, DHCP, and then under relay. Okay, so what this does is this basically tells your workstation is going to send out a DHCP request, port 6768, I believe. It's going to go to the switch. It's going to go to the Sophos. It's going to say, hey, where's my IP address? And then Sophos is going to say, well, your IP address, access VLAN 20, is at this device. So it's a helper address, and then you can relay through IPsec for VPN. We're not going to be doing anything like that right now. Something we may do later on when we do the branch office. That's something I've actually never had to do in real life. I'd like to know how well that works on these devices. So now we'll do one for our voice as well, because they are going to need DHCP addresses if we had some. And basically that's it. Bam. Done. Now we've got our 2 relays. So when any device on here goes to look for an IP address, it's going to look to this server, and that's it.